Hey everybody, welcome to the Approved Perspective podcast powered by Approved Social. Hey guys, welcome back to Approved Perspective. We're excited to have EJ with us today. EJ is an expert in all thing outdoors in terms of the digital space. So you're talking about lots of different businesses that are prioritizing probably hunting and fishing and land management. I don't know exactly everything. We're going to find out a lot about EJ here in a second, but I'm super excited to share something that EJ and I talked about already, which is about books and how he uses books to promote his business, to promote other businesses, and it seems to be a really successful metric for him. And he's got one, I think, upcoming. What was the name of that upcoming book you got? Want to give it a plug?
It's the Anti-Seasonal Framework, Redefining the Seasons, the Ultimate Guide to Doubling Revenue in the Outdoor Industry.
Yes, absolutely. I love Dublin revenue. And so, I think that framework also is something that everybody needs to be thinking about in the digital marketing space. So, super excited to get into that. It applies for sure for the outdoor space, but when you're talking about seasonality of ad campaigns, most times people are starting too late in the preparation process and they're getting started with their Black Friday ad a couple weeks before or something like that. The good companies, you see, they're doing it for months before and after. So some exciting things I want to talk to you about in regards to that. But first, why don't you just tell the folks in our audience, in our community, a little bit about yourself? How'd you get started in this crazy world? Where are you located? It looks like you're a hunter like me. Let's talk a little bit about some stuff here.
Yeah, I kind of grew up in the marketing space starting back in 2008. I worked for a company called Orange Soda, and that was my big aha that the industry of marketing and development and all that was what I wanted to do. Quickly realized that having an understanding of multiple facets was going to be very important to succeed, and so that I could run and do everything on my own, at least to start something and to be able to communicate to people as it going. Because when I went in, my whole thing was I wanted to own a marketing company or some kind of an online company, because back then in 2008, you probably remember this, like the whole big thing of like working from home. It was like a dream, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was the big thing, that like if you worked from home, you were like a big shot.
Crazy.
Or you were unemployed, right? Something. And so
yeah, because that was the thing. You'd be like, oh, well, I'm working from home right now. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. In between jobs.
Right. I've been in and out of a lot of that kind of stuff, really just trying to hone in my skills. Went to school and, worked for another agency, attempted to start a couple different businesses along the way. Those were not successful. And until December of 2019.
What space were those businesses in, real quick? Sorry. Oh, there's...
Yeah. So I did a massage therapy business, and then I did it was very different. And that was before I went to college, actually. And so I was just trying to figure out what I was wanting to do with my life, really.
Oh, okay.
Dove down that, found out that was not the route I wanted to go, which resulted in me going and getting a job at Orange Soda. And that's what kicked it off, because then I looked for degrees and schooling and stuff to learn programming and design and some of those other aspects of this whole thing. And so that went down that route. Started a company called TNB Media, True Natural Bodybuilder. So we actually
cool.
Live streaming bodybuilding events. So we would travel around and live stream bodybuilding events. We did a PBR rodeo event, and then we did some Spartan races and things like that too. So it was kind of a cool thing. Back then, though, it was kind of like in the very, very beginnings of live streaming. And so everybody was skeptical. Nobody wanted to pay for advertising. And people didn't even want it. It was hard to convince some people to even do it, because they're like, well, then nobody's going to show up to my live event. And it's like, bro, have you heard of the NBA? ESPN? People are going to show, right, for that live experience. But so that was a really big hurdle to try to encompass. I was young, I was dumb, and just didn't make it happen. On that front. So that business did not succeed.
It's interesting. I think most people connect. Anybody likely everyone listening to this podcast is very motivated, self-motivated, entrepreneurial, started businesses, maybe in their own business right now, or in a startup of some sort. And um, I think that we all can connect with that. We can all connect with those ideas and things that failed. And I think you have to be, if you're an entrepreneur, you have to be the type that fails, but at least falls forward in that time. Because it just, otherwise it's just too discouraging. People just can't, most people who want to live the normal life of having a normal house and a normal little, family and whatever, um, they don't want the risk, they don't want the stress, and it's a lot more difficult. Some people say choose your hard, right? Like you're either gonna be doing it for yourself or you're doing it for someone else, and they could fire you. That's totally true. But there is another level of every day I'm showing up to keep the business moving forward, to keep everybody paid, their families fed, and not only that, when you're in digital marketing like we are, we're essentially helping the clients feed their families and their employees, and so there's a lot of stress there. So it's like you almost have to go through those things, I feel like, in life to get to where we're at right now, where you have a successful team of people behind you and you've been able to build this. But it probably wouldn't have happened the right way the first time, right? So I think that's great.
But since then, I worked for an agency for close to 6 years and really honed in my skills. I was on the development team, so I did a lot of website development, custom programming, a lot of really cool stuff there. That was actually where I started in that, because I wanted to hone that skill in deeper, and then that led to there were some people. I joined the military too around that time. So when I came back from basic training, yeah, thank you. When I came back from basic training, there was a number of people that were leaving, which left a big hole for me to jump in to help manage ads, to help manage the SEO strategies for clients and things like that. And so I literally dove in deep in all levels. So I was doing ad management, SEO. I was helping with email marketing strategies whenever that would come up. That wasn't a big thing in that agency, but we did do a little bit. And then the programming, I was kind of all hands on deck for like that 5-year period at that front. And so it was kind of a weird, I was kind of going through like a weird time in life towards 2019, where I was just trying to figure out, am I on the right path? Am I doing what I should be doing in life and things like that, which led me to pick up a book called Start With Why.
Start With Why.
Yeah, from Simon Sinek.
Okay.
And I went and read through that book, and then I got the second follow-up book that was Find Your Why, which is more of a workbook that couples with that book, right? With the Start With Why. And so really dialed in on why am I here? Why am I doing what I should be doing? Am I fulfilling my deep internal purpose that I feel like I was put on this earth, right? And I definitely aligned with that, and got that written down. I have I don't have the book here with me, but I've got charts where I kind of dialed in different parts of my life and put a graph to it, and to figure out if there was continuity with different events throughout my life and things like that, and there definitely was. So it's kind of interesting. If you ever have the need or want to dive into some self-reflection, that's a great way to do it. But that kind of put me into a spot to where I was sitting in church, and I was kind of halfway asleep, as most can probably relate a little bit to that. And but it was kind of weird, because it was something. Have you ever the closest thing I can relate it to is, have you ever been driving down late at night down a road, and then all of a sudden something flies in front of you, or somebody goes to cut you off, and your car goes up to the side of the road, and all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, and you got that adrenaline rush of okay, I'm going to be awake for the rest of the night. That was the very same feeling, that out of nowhere I just got that big rush of like, holy crap, I need to change something in my life. I
Yeah.
need to change direction. I need to go somewhere else. So my first reaction was like, maybe I need to go get another job. Maybe I just kind of think
Yep.
about shifting some of that direction. Maybe there's something better out there that will more align with it. But it was very clear, big smack in the face. And so I started diving down that path of like, okay, what am I going to do? So it took me a couple months to kind of figure it out. I was talking to a good friend of mine, Brian. He's very entrepreneurial. He owns some very successful businesses. He actually sold one of his daycare chain and bought like half of Nauvoo, Illinois. So he owns like a bunch of hotels and Airbnbs and different things out there now. And um, so he's very successful. But he was one that was like if you don't, he's like, you can do this on, you can go off and do this on your own. And I'd gotten a degree in cybersecurity, and so that was a big thing that I wanted to set myself up to be able to really go after um, that aspect, along with doing some marketing and just kind of honing it in. So my initial thought was like, man, I could do this, and I can start out with some marketing clients, and then I can roll into the cybersecurity realm, so I can offer everything, right? Growth. We're going to grow your company. We're going to secure your company, um, type of thing. And so that's ever since then. Man, March of 2020 is when I started Blaze, and it's been a wild ride. So
Really, what an interesting time to start a new venture, right? And it sounds like you not only started it, but you also like carved out a really specific niche sort of in that whole process too. Did that take some time
mhm.
for you to determine where you were gonna go? I mean, do you have like you? It sounds like you probably have a background in the outdoor space. Is that sort of
Yeah.
just naturally led into that? Did you find your first
Yeah.
client and that sort of led you that way? What was the process there?
No, so the agency I'd worked for, they had a handful of outdoor companies. Like
I see. Okay.
it was good. So I had a very strong background with some good stable brands in the industry. Um, and when I left, there was actually small handful that followed me over to
Oh,
my new
cool.
company, and so it was a natural thing that was like, here's here's an itch.
Yeah.
This further sign that I was like probably doing the things I needed to be doing. So
I
yeah.
love that, man. I was just talking to a buddy of mine, Ben. He's going to be on the podcast, one of these episodes pretty soon. And he was recently let go from the company that he worked at. And, he was sort of on the fence of going like, do I leave or do I stay? I want to start my own business. And so they've been doing some stuff on the side, him and his wife. She's been doing some digital marketing clients, and they've started a product for babies that allows you to clip stuff onto stuff and keep it from falling. It's really cool. And so, anyways, he was just talking a little bit about like how the direction of sort of life and how you're directed to the next thing sometimes in ways that you don't necessarily know or don't necessarily think is the way it's supposed to happen. Hey, I want to start my business on my time. Well, sometimes you might not do that. You might be too late, right? You might be too lazy to get it done. But if you actually have a kick in the pants, sometimes that's what's required. And it sounds like sort of there was a time for you there that like really sort of motivated you and got you into that space where you were ready to move forward with that. It was similar for me actually, where I had been doing stuff on the side with my agency, and um, in some ways wasn't really even doing that good of a job for them because I was having to work at 9 o'clock, 5, 6, 7 o'clock after work hours, or sneak it in during work. And it turns out when you launch a website selling your services online, that your customer, your employers don't love that, so they let me go there as well. And even though they encouraged us, I will say, to do our own stuff, they did not like what I was doing. So they didn't want any competition, I guess, in the digital space. But anyways, it was interesting because, if it hadn't been for that moment, what would I be doing now? Would I still be at that company? Would I have gotten the motivation to do this or not? And it really made me dive all in. And here we are today, sitting on a podcast, talking to really cool people, and have a SaaS company and a digital marketing agency. And it's an interesting journey that we're on today. So EJ, like, thanks for the background on you and sort of a little bit about you. You're a married man, family man,
Married, 4 kids, um,
four
ranging
kids. All
from
right.
14 to 5. Yeah,
Okay, very cool. All right, you got a few
yeah.
more to go, or you guys
Nope, we're done, man.
love it? That's
I've got
awesome.
3 weddings
I'm
I got to
I'm
now pay for, so
yeah,
we're
that's
good.
fantastic. Yeah, no, we just have our first. He just turned one, and he's had some skin like severe eczema stuff, and it's just like, wow, this is a lot. You could see some bags under the eyes. It's the old sleep stuff. But I think I slept till about, or I was up till about 4 this morning, and then got up, and now I'm doing this. But so tell me a little bit more. Yeah, fun. So tell me a little bit more about this product. Like, let's get into it. I want to hear a little bit about the book that you're producing or creating. I think you said it's very close to be launched. And I also want to hear more specifically, even than that, like the strategy behind it. Like, what's the strategy for you? What's the goal, the metrics that you're kind of going, this book is going to accomplish X, Y, and Z for me. And I think you might have some data on that because of other books and things that you've done, right?
Yeah, so when I launched the ebook version of the anti-seasonal framework, which is um, became like a strong lead magnet for us, and a lot of people in the industry it was attractive to a lot of people, um, which told me that the pain point and the issues, the frustrations, all that stuff that I was focusing on, that was that the ebook was kind of helping to solve, was
Yeah,
something that people were very much interested in. And so
good.
um, so with that, I was like, I need to expand upon it. There's so much more. We're talking about how to navigate the year and 90-day game plans, and creating 30-day attack plans, and how to really structure your campaigns, and having a customer acquisition strategy versus an upsell and an ascension strategy. Like, those are all different
Yeah,
components to this pie, right? And then we're talking, like, a lot of people in the outdoor space get influencers, and yeah, referral
yep,
programs and all that stuff, right? All that plays into certain pieces of the journey. And so the book really dives into, bring it back to the fundamentals first, because every company that I've ever worked with, when I started working with them, they always just wanted to sell stuff, right? There was no real
right.
strategy to their thing. He's like, hey, I created this product, now make me millions. And it's like, okay, do we even understand, like, if that solves a particular problem of people are going to want it, or is it something that you created because you thought it was cool? And that's really what the case is 9 times out of 10. And so it's like, okay, we have to create an offer. We have to create something that's going to do something and solve something for somebody. And so helping that process of, like, okay, now we have we have customers coming in. Now let's look at average order value. How do we increase that? How
Mm-hmm.
do we provide more value with what they just purchased, right? Or do we just need to try to sell them more of what they just bought, which was the case for, like,
Yeah.
Bow Spider, because he had like
So
one
give us that
product.
example
So
because I think a lot of people, this is a big one for people. Some people aren't even ever thinking about average order value. They're only thinking
mhm.
about customer cost, CAC or lifetime value or whatever that might be for that product or service. What is in your experience when you're talking about some of these things, like, can an upsell, is that what you're thinking of? Like, you go, okay, hey, somebody's going to make this purchase. Let's see if we can upsell them into X, Y, and Z thing to get that
Mhm.
value up higher. What's your thought process
Yeah,
on that? 'Cause I think that's an interesting one.
yeah. So I mean, because if you think about it, like, you paid all this money to acquire a customer, and so you have ad costs, you've got management fees, you got the cost of the actual product and the shipping and all that stuff baked into this whole thing, right?
Right.
So you have to at least break even on that initial sale. And so in my mind, if we're not at minimum breaking even, there's something wrong. But then two, like, how do we get a little more juice out of it? Because we need to scale, we need to expand, we need to get new products and do all that kind of stuff. So how are we going to go and do that if we can't break even, or at least be somewhat profitable in the very beginning? And so I'm a big proponent of Dan Kennedy and his thing around those who can spend the most to acquire a customer wins. So how do you do that? Well, you have to acquire those customers profitably, and so you have to take into consideration average order value, especially on the new customers. And it's funny because like Scree, for example, I've been working with them for a long time, and we've looked deep into the data, especially this year, of like, okay, how many new customers versus returning customers do we have? Okay, cool. Now let's look at the average order value of new versus returning. Well, the returning customers was much smaller. I mean, we're talking like sub $100, right, for returning customers. Where our new customers, our average order value was upwards of like $400, a little over $400. And so it's like, oh, that's where all the profit really is, right? Because everybody coming back, they're coming back to utilize a discount. They're coming back, and so there's still some costs to that. It's a little bit profitable, but the big thing was like, we really just need to acquire more customers if we want to increase profitability, and we want to scale the company. We want to do all that kind of stuff, which is a really, really good place to be. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have new customers coming into the door frequently and regularly, you're going to be stonewalled at some point, and you're not going to be able to. You're not going to grow. Is the big thing.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, you have to be able to take advantage of obviously the person that's there right in front of your door buying now, and try to increase the value of their order, and knowing that, sure, you can email them for much cheaper. You can bring them back with automated drips or deals or something that, you don't have to go out and necessarily spend a lot of ad dollars on that person again, unless they, retargeting or whatever. But it still costs you something, right? It still costs you something to bring them back. Finding someone new also costs you even more generally. So, we've done some studies on this because of sort of what Approved Social does for businesses. And we found that, a pretty interesting stat. So it's 5 times more expensive to go out and acquire a new customer than to retain an existing one. So it's not quite the same thing we're not talking about here, but we're talking about sort of the idea of, once you get them there, make sure that you're getting as much out of them as you possibly can. And I don't mean that in a way to sound like you're manipulating them into giving you money or whatever, like you're not lying to them or anything. I'm just saying you're offering them things that they want that you might not have done well before in your website, right? You're giving them opportunities in the checkout process to add this special or add this deal, or claim this special discount code now by upselling to the platinum package or whatever that is. And I think that that's such a massive thing, that when you go to a website, I know as a digital marketer, and those people who are listening right now connect to this, you go to a website and they do that well, you kind of have you have some respect for them, right? Like, you're a bodybuilder, so I'm sure you go to these supplement companies, or you go to these like pre-workout sites or whatever, like they do a great job of that. Most of them do a fantastic job of saying like, but buy now and you can get the dad bod destroyer pack or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's like, like they're doing everything that they possibly can to increase the order value of that person. And I just think that's something that we all need to really kind of remind ourselves of as we're building out these journeys, to go, okay, like, yeah, you got them to buy something great. What do you do now? What do you do next? And what? So that's pretty cool. Tell us a little bit more about, like, what have you seen in this sort of philosophy that you've created of the seasonal approach? And like, what is that just like the overarching view? What's the 30,000 foot view of what this is, what it means?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the outdoor space, especially, like, it's very seasonal. You have season comes like the hunting industry, You've got, your spring hunts, your turkey, your bear, some predator hunting towards the beginning of the year, and then that rolls into some of your summer hunts or summer scouting, and then you get later on in the year where you have archery season and some of those bigger game hunts, the deer hunts, the elk hunts, all that kind of stuff that rolls in to the fall and somewhat of the winter. So with that, there's different purposes. You have different things that you need to buy and acquire, and if you're cold weather versus hot weather, and like all those different things, right? Different purposes. And so knowing that, you have to kind of gear your offers. You have to gear your strategy and your approach very differently. The beginning of the year, it's very much like expo season is what we call it, because that's where all the expos happen. And so it's like, cool, let's get you an expo strategy. Like, what is the main point of the beginning of the year? Well, we got to do lead gen. We got to start, be doing some of that to qualify people early on. Let's test a little bit of offers, but really it's all about lead gen. And so phase 2, you're getting into some of the spring hunts. So you're going to be starting to sell some stuff. So let's create some offers there, but let's start integrating and working with bigger companies to do giveaways and those things to kind of create excitement that leads us into the summer, which is kind of like our pre-hunt thing where, we can lean a little more heavily on some of the sales and stuff, but then that leads into the big game season where August is generally bigger than Black Friday, Cyber Monday in the industry. So it's like, how do you ramp into that? As you're testing things, doing lead gen, all that kind of stuff, you're kind of setting yourself up for success. And so, but doing so, it's really just kind of like looking at the whole year and taking 90-day chunks out of it and saying, okay, what is our goal? What is our objective? What is our strategy? What is the thing that we need to accomplish in this 90-day period? What do we need to implement? And then going to the next. Each quarter should lead into the next. And so that's how we kind of ramp people up, is what I say. Like, we're going to ramp you up into the buying season, set you up to where everything can become systematic in a way that, you're going to have ebbs and flows, right? That's just the way it is. But we're going to be able to increase that bar each and every year because we're going to learn and we're going to expand upon what we just did the year previous. So if we have 100 people on our list in January of the previous year, and then we come back to the January the next year, and now we have 10,000 people on the list, right? And then we have, it just keeps increasing over time. And so that's really like, if you take that and use that approach, I've seen it happen again and again and again, of companies doubling in size at least by really focusing their efforts, because everybody has this shiny object syndrome. Everybody has it. And that's like, it's crazy in the outdoor space. Like, everybody, they're not tech savvy. They don't understand the game online. They're relying on people like me and others to come in to kind of help guide them. But it's a really scary thing for them. And so you have to navigate that and really pinpoint their focus of like, regardless of what happens, this is what we're doing for the quarter. This is our plan. This is our strategy. If we need to adjust, we can. We've got a backup. We've got, a contingency plan, so to speak, if we need to adjust fire. But at the end of the day, we need to focus, and keeping people focused is probably one of the hardest things, because if things don't go as planned or whatever it is, it's like some people, they just panic. They completely panic with it. And I don't think that's subjected to just the outdoor space. I think that's people in general. Yeah. But it takes the eye off the ball. Yeah, it takes the eye off the ball, and it can really screw things up for what you're trying to accomplish. And they kind of tend to forget like what the purpose of the quarter was, and they get stuck on sales when it's like, well, we're not focusing on sales. We're focusing on lead gen and quality lead gen and making sure that those things are in place, and in your expos and things like that. We're not focusing on the big numbers yet. Yeah. And so like, it's interesting, the bigger the companies get, the more educated they get, and they're a lot easier to work with because they understand the game. But
true. Some people, I mean, it feels like it's this is like a constant battle for I would say agency owners and just clients in general. Is you typically, you're gonna sit down with them, you're selling them, you're meeting with them, right, and you're talking about a strategy. And generally, what we do is we bring to the table, Our ideas initially for that first kind of customer meeting, we're going, okay, let's research the brand, let's look into their content, their websites, and see what's lacking, what can we do to improve? Is there areas that we can come in and improve? Because we always want to be, value added. And so we'll do that research, we'll look at it, we'll come into with a little bit. And then we kind of take the information from that meeting, we go build a strategy. And that strategy is usually 6 months to a year long, right? And it takes that amount of time to build the foundation and structure and framing and, electrical and everything for the house, right? To build it into a way that you're actually creating something that can be lived in and used for years. And it seems like people don't understand the commitment that it takes to that, but they do understand hiring a salesperson in-house because they can measure sort of the number of people that they've called or the number of, faces that they've seen or emails that they've generated, or, gotten or whatever. There's something about the connection that we still aren't able to communicate to clients super well that, hey, look, here's the number of eyes. Like you can tell them, hey, we had 5 million impressions on this ad, right? And they're going to go, what does that mean? Well, it's part of the funnel that we're building, right? And then we're going to move those people into this next ad, and then they're going to see this next thing, right? And so you're working on this funnel with them that if they don't see the ROI quickly, you can run into some issues. And this is where Approved Social comes back into it, which is what we want to alleviate the amount of time to get a campaign live as possible. So if we can set up a little bit of that time, if we save a little bit of that time through the customer interaction and feedback process, that's what we're trying to do and help agencies do. And I think that's a massive problem that we all have. So totally get it. And I think today I'm still working on how do we communicate to clients so that they are comfortable. One tip that I've learned, I'm sure you've learned this, is reporting, right? Like send a good report once a month or bi-weekly or whatever your kind of ideal, customer wants, right? And so, that has sort of pushed people off a little bit so that we get some of that data to them where they can feel like, okay, I can see here's how many people, I can see how many clicks, I can see how many purchases were driven by X, Y, and Z thing. And then making sure tracking is set up really clearly so that you as a marketer and the agency who's working for those people does get credit for those things. Because too often I've gone into something and I know that I can see the success spike as soon as I did this, but I failed to check the tracking that they said that they had installed properly, or they have their, their tracking guy or their internal marketing guy that set it all up and you don't have to mess with it. Well, great, right? I didn't get credit for that. And that client's not super happy with me anymore, right? Or whatever. Yeah. So it's definitely a problem. So I love the anti-seasonal framework and I love the idea behind it because I think, we also have to focus on just getting a client to understand that process. And if you can get them to understand that process, the lifetime value of that client is just going to massively increase. You go from someone who might stay with you 3 months to someone who might stay with you 12 months. And by that time, I don't know what the stat is, but I'm gonna put like 50% or more. Those people are gonna stay with you more than that year. If you get them to 12 months, you probably got them for another year or more. I've had clients for 2 or 3, 4, 5 years that we've worked with. So, it's telling that story. We all know it for ads, the hooks, the story, the offer. Thank you, Russell Brunson, and all the smart people out there, right? You got to tell that well, and you got to do that in your own craft and how you're communicating with your clients. So that's really interesting. Any other things that you want to share on the anti-seasonal framework? Because I think it's a big, it's a big part of this, and I want to make sure that we're covering it correctly.
I think that the big thing is just kind of understanding that the entire year as a whole ebbs and flows. That's why it's important to understand each part of the year and the purpose, marketing-wise, what that should look like. And if you do that right, you will ramp up into the buying season. But the big thing too is like understanding your customer, understanding like what type of content do you need to produce in order for somebody to take that next step in the purchase process. So we take in the book, we go over, each phase of the year, but then we break it down. Now, here's how to structure a campaign. So we have a 5-level framework called the 5-level ad domination framework that we use not only for ads, but we use it for email, we use it for everything, because it's all about segmentation and audience building and delivering the right message to the right person at the right time. And so if we can do that effectively, that's where we really see things go, because some platforms, some messages, some things are just going to be good to just drive traffic. We have to accept that. We have to understand that that's an important piece of the pie, and then we need to have other things in place that's going to help, leverage that piece of content and then take them to that next step. And so the book dives deep into all of those components on building a campaign, building, messaging and building content that's going to be purposeful for people to be taking in action, which is something that a lot of people in the marketing space miss the boat on considerably, is really understanding the role of content and what needs to be done at a certain level in order for actions to be taken by the user.
Yeah.
And so that's really the bulk of it. And at the end, we kind of give like a one sheet,
I love that,
marketing kind of plan of like, okay, now let's put it all together. Let's put this plan together so you can execute on it.
I love that. Yeah, one of the best documents that I've ever created was just a year-long strategy document. It was for nonprofits that I was working for at the time, a lot of them, and it was amazing how few of them actually. It was like a light bulb moment. They're like, "Oh wow, I can use this to plan out my tasks and fundraising and other things," and have people coming to me and saying, "Hey, like I need to raise some money for this year." Well, how much do you need to raise? Like, what are the specifics of that so that we can craft that campaign correctly? I'm sure it's the same for you guys over there, and I think that it's just interesting how that all works. So basically, this company called Pete's Coffee, it's pretty interesting. Have you heard of this thing that just happened? Okay, so Pete's Coffee, they came out and they said they're going to do a disloyalty program for National Coffee Day. And so what it means is, so anybody can bring in a competitor's punch card and get credit for those punches on their store and their coffee and their whatever. And I thought about this, EJ. I was like, this is brilliant. This is a great idea, right?
Yeah.
Because you're basically turning in your punches for these other companies that you're competing with for an immediate gratification of, I want coffee today, right? Like, I might be, a few punches away and maybe I'm not going to give it up. But like at the same time, I'm there. I want coffee. I'm with my coworkers or whatever. Take my Dunkin' Donuts card or Starbucks, whatever, and use it. I think that's just such an interesting way to do it. You're taking away from the competition, and you're hopefully making a customer at that point. So what do you think about that? Have you ever done anything like that or seen anything like that before?
Yeah, I have. So PhoneScope, we actually launched a product or a program. It was a trade-in program to where you can trade in any other like PhoneScope product from a competitor,
Okay.
or even some of the older versions of PhoneScope that they had, and use that as a credit to get a new PhoneScope.
Right.
And it was successful. It was good, and it's good because it creates some banter in the marketplace too, and
Yeah.
gets people talking, which that engagement alone is going to be well worth it. Because that's marketing you can't necessarily pay for.
I think it's so smart. And you're right. There are a lot of companies like that do that sort of exchange rebate thing. Apple probably does something like that. Well, I don't know about with competitors, but it's just it's an interesting idea. And it just sort of goes, okay, we don't have to do the standard offers. You don't have to do the standard punch cards. You don't have to do the standard thing. You can come up with something that's creative, and it's going to give that campaign that might have been successful before that extra bump, that extra 10-20% bump of effectiveness, and you're going to start seeing your ad spend be more effective because organically you're going to see more shares. I always find that fun when you can launch an ad and you can show that client, hey, even after we stop running that ad campaign, you can see how it's still getting shares, it's still getting likes, it's growing in momentum. And I think that's really cool. So interesting idea there. So tell me, going back to our talk now about your book, I want to talk about the creative because you mentioned there's like a five the ad, what was it? The ad creative, what was it called?
The 5-level ad domination framework.
Five
Yeah.
level ad domination framework. In that, I love that because you're talking about, I'm assuming, creative and copy and what that looks like. Is that right? Can you tell us like what are you looking for in an ad creative along this journey? Maybe there's like the first step is, audience building, like we would typically, I'm assuming most of us do, right? We're doing some audience building, whether that's video views or something. What do you typically do for your first step when
Yeah.
you're working with a client like this?
So it is, yeah, we're doing either like a brand anthem video. And so we're introducing the brand to the marketplace, what their beliefs are, all that kind of stuff. And or we like to do lead gen at that first stage. And
Okay.
so we like to give something away for free, whether it's
Yep.
discount or education or whatever, right? We try to get that engagement. But the big thing we're trying to look for is like, how do we deliver messaging that, because as you know, like targeting is great, but when you can couple uh, awesome copy that really dials in and speaks to your audience with the targeting, that's where the magic is. And I've proven this even with my own offers because I offered the anti-seasonal framework and then I offered what we call the growth revenue accelerator, where I was targeting the same audiences, but the messaging and the offer was different, and I got a completely different audience opting in for my accelerator versus the anti-seasonal framework. Completely
Right.
different. And
Even though your
so,
targeting might have been the same in those
yeah,
campaigns, the people that Facebook found it, showed interest in your ad, completely different.
yep,
That's a great point. There's just because Facebook gives you an audience doesn't mean that that's 100% those people. You are going to need to grab their attention quickly with that hook or whatever you have there. Sounds like for you it's a lead magnet
yeah,
or download, which is always a
yep.
great thing to give away information, give away free content. That's great. Do you have a tip on headlines, ads? Do you use video, static? Like what works best for you?
I like to use video. Video is, I think, by far the best creative. A, because you can have copy in on the actual ad, but then your subtitles act as a secondary form of copy as well. That you submit that SRT file that has all the words in that video directly to the platform. So it's going to use those combined into targeting the right person that's going to want to engage with that piece of content. And then the key here is delivering an offer that just takes them to that next step, right? So whether if they're trying to go to the website, trying to read a blog post, trying to, download something, like that next step needs to be extremely clear on what you're trying to do. And I think, a lot of people get mixed up on that too, because they're just like, well, we'll just do a traffic campaign, but we're going to do a traffic campaign, but we're going to focus on how many sales we get from it. And it's like, well, that's not congruent with what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some kind of misalignment along the way, and you're going to get mixed results. It's not going to do what you want it to do. And so it's like keeping that in line and congruent along the way. I created a video, a blog post on ad congruency, where on digitalmarketer.com, where I was talking about what you deliver in the ad itself needs to be completely congruent to what is on the landing page. So if you're speaking, even like the same headlines, the same sometimes the same creative or something very similar in look and feel needs to replicate what's on that landing
Yep.
page, so that when they go from the ad to the landing page, they know they're in the right spot. It's a seamless transition. They're going to be more apt to take that next step on that landing page because of that. And so, but really, it's like thinking through that process of like, it's like having a conversation with somebody. Like, you're not going to immediately meet somebody and then say, hey, I need you to buy this thing. Well, some people do that, right? But what is the success rate? What people are going to look at him and be like, dude, you're just trying to scam me out of something. I
Yep.
don't like that. Versus somebody that's just coming up, having a conversation, trying to figure out like, what you like, your hobbies, all that kind of stuff. And then that leads into the next thing. It's like dating someone. You're not going to ask for marriage on that first date generally. You want to get to know the person. You want to build that relationship. And so if you do that and treat your marketing like that, you may have a more longer play at the beginning, but you're going to have a bigger and more long-term success rate because your reputation is going to be there, and people aren't just, you're not just out there just to take people's money, so to speak. You're trying to improve people's lives. And so the content and the things that you do in that process is going to reflect that.
Yeah, and EJ, I know that, there's a lot of marketers out there. I'm sure we both can probably name a dozen or more that you wouldn't necessarily trust with how they're going to run the campaigns in the background, right? They're going to be there's definitely marketers out there that are doing some shifty stuff there. And I think that, I've set out to make sure that when like everything that my customer owns everything, right? Like it's their ad account, it's their like everything, because I want them to know that they can 100% trust me. And sometimes that's actually to my own, like it hurts me, right? Because sometimes there's people, when you do really well for someone and a client, this has happened to me, nice people, whatever, and they go, well, I don't need to pay you anymore, really, because this campaign sort of runs on autopilot. If you've ever had those kind of clients where, you sort of, you go, well, really, that's cool, nice, so I made you tons of money, and you're going to just cut off what we do because that campaign is working. Well, hopefully it continues working, because, in a couple months, maybe Facebook makes some changes and it won't, or your audience wears out or whatever. But I think, it's great to hear that you have that focus on integrity to say, look, we can still convince someone to make a purchase, but we don't have to be misleading them. We don't have to be lying. We're providing them with value from the get, and they're excited to work with us. And I think that's a great way to do it. So you do some speaking and you do some writing. It sounds like you've contributed to some blogs, some articles online. Where, like, I think, do you have any speaking engagements that are upcoming that you want to pitch real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a local event this Friday, actually, doing a local workshop with a couple other business professionals in the local area, doing a little marketing and getting ready for the end of the year type thing. But I'm going to be speaking at Traffic and Conversion Summit in January. I'm also speaking at the Archery Trade Association show, as well as the National Professional Anglers Association. I'm going to be doing a 2.5-hour workshop with some influencers there, teaching them how to build content. So, yeah.
Interesting. So on like copy primarily, I'm assuming, if that's what.
Some of it will be copy. At the MPAA show, I'll be diving deep into content strategy just as a whole, and really diving into like video content with the influencers. And so there's going to be a big group of influencers who are coming there to learn how to be better in the angling space and the fishing space. And so I'm going to teach them how to make their sponsors more money with their content.
Yeah.
Is really what I'm going to be teaching them. Yeah.
Very interesting. This is interesting because you're talking about people who are influencers that you're helping to basically sell the products that they're getting sponsored to sell. Is that right? Like, how do you feature that product in the video that you shot when you're out fly fishing? How to feature the, to use something so that you're actually taking advantage of, how to maybe outreach to some of these folks to actually get deals. To do that. Is that right? Is that sort of along those lines?
Yeah.
Because I think that's a very interesting strategy for a lot of people to hear about.
Yeah, and even just how to build a script. How do they build a script based on this product, and to get people to, to do whatever I need to do with it. And so just kind of understanding the psychology behind some of the messaging and things of that nature. It'll be fun.
So EJ, fun question here. If your speeches had a theme song, what would it be? And that's a funny question. What would it be? Because, are you like high energy? Some people, when they get on stage, they're freaking different people. They're like a different person altogether. What are you about to play? Something?
Yeah. So there's a song, right? It's called Lighthouse, by a band called Word Alive.
Okay.
And that would be my theme song for sure.
I love it. Cool. And it's super fun to chat with folks like you who are entrepreneurs, who've built a business, who are growing their agencies, who found specific niches for where they need to be. I think that was something that was huge for my business, was getting started with. You kind of mentioned this. I want to offer everything to everyone, and you sort of need to niche down and go into what specifics you're going to be doing. What are you, not only what audience are you serving, but what specifically are you offering that audience? You can be offering them too much and trying to do too much as an agency and just not doing it well. Focus on what you're doing best. And those people come to you for a subject matter as a subject matter expert. And I think that's what you've done really well, EJ, with your business. We've done some work with Outdoor Space, Texas Trophy Hunters, and Spin Tech, and a couple others. And I think it's definitely interesting. It's an interesting environment, interesting world. I'm a hunter, conservationist, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, we care about the outdoors, and I think it's fun that you're able to participate with that. And I'm sure there's a lot of education that goes along with these businesses, educating people on why we do what we do. Why do we hunt? Why is there the need for folks like us to get out there and actually get into nature and take care of it and do what we need to do to sort of be our part? I think that's a really interesting thing. I just want to mention that at the end of this conversation. Kind of a controversial thing for some people, especially in the tech world. You probably got a lot. There are folks that are not used to hunting at all, maybe not interested, maybe whatever. But the truth is, folks out there, that like we do the things we do, and it protects and continues to grow, keep the states beautiful. In Texas, we have a real problem with pigs, as I'm sure you're aware of, EJ. They are everywhere, and they destroy everything, and they kill cattle, and they kill sheep and horses and all sorts of stuff, and they do all sorts of damage. And it's our duty, I think, to help take care of those things. There, I'll get off the high horse now.
Yeah.
One last question, EJ. Digital marketing in one word.
Exhilarating.
Exhilarating. Yes, you heard it here, everybody. EJ Saunders. Check out his book. The book is it's about the anti-seasonal framework. Tell us the whole title. It's a little bit.
So it is the anti-seasonal framework, redefining the seasons. It's the ultimate guide to doubling revenue in the outdoor industry.
So if you have clients that are in the outdoor industry, or you are in the outdoor industry, or a business that's using Approved Social right now, go ahead and check out EJ's book. I'm sure there's some great resources in there. It's a download as well, but you can go buy the book, the physical copy. It's coming out soon. Give us the dates and the details of that.
So it's going to be coming out in November, and yeah, it'll be on Amazon. And so
Cool.
Definitely check it out there, and we'll be selling it on our website as well. So it's either one. So blazedigitalsolutions.com or get it on Amazon. I think
Fantastic.
Be good.
EJ, thanks so much. Once again, everybody, this is sponsored by Approved Social. Approved Social is the first collaborative feedback, approval, and publishing engine for digital marketers that gives you the ability to actually speed up the time to launch your campaigns. We've done some case studies, pretty interesting stuff, up to 40% reduction in time to launch your campaign. So if you haven't gotten out to check out Approved Social, give it a try. We've got free trial. And after that, it's $19 a month. You can't really beat it. Get it going. So we'll talk to you more in the next episode. Thank you, everybody.